Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga, and today it is finally time to conclude the Reincarnation arc of Black Clover because, huzzah, I did finish it this week. And things certainly escalated to a level that, I wasn't quite expecting, even though escalation beyond expectations is kind of like Tabata's staple move during arc climaxes. Still, finally done, and there is a whole ton to go through. But before doing so, may I encourage you to reincarnate your interest in the subscribe button for the New World Review, the pressing of which will grant regular Black Clover content uploaded straight into your YouTube feed, as well as let me know that you want more of the adventures of Devil Child and friends. So we're going to start with some of the less impactful in retrospect events of Reincarnation, because if I don't get them out now, then they're just going to get lost in a world of devils and wizard kings, plural. But where I pick things up from pretty much throw us straight into a battle against one Dorothy Unsworth, quite possibly the most regal and wanky sounding name that we have been subjected to thus far in the series, but more accurately, it was the elf possessing Dorothy Unsworth and gained access to her very tricksy dream magic. But this fight was incredibly enjoyable and very cleverly structured. The team up against her, consisting of Vanessa, Magna, Lux, Sally, and of course Charmy, were an intriguing combination, and I quite enjoyed that Sally got some time to shine here. When she isn't being a mad dissection enthusiast, she's pretty pleasant and super smart, effectively coming up with the whole counter dream strategy, which I think was quite brilliant on the part of Tabata as well. The whole convinced the elf that the real Dorothy Unsworth was conjured, and thus making that a reality. Very big gambit, but very high reward. And afterwards we also had a nice skirmish between Elf Gauche and Elf Marie versus the remaining of the Black Bulls, and we got to explore another cool concept of not being able to look at your opponent in battle, which, I did quite like that. I also really like that Tabata is starting to make confrontations like these centered around an idea. It reminds me a lot of fights in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where an enemy stand will present some ridiculous condition that can only really be overcome by mental dissection. Stuff like that adds a great layer to combat and stops it from being incredibly repetitive, basic mage fighty fights, which is very important in a mega arc like this, where action is effectively non-stop. If these fights didn't present some very interesting ideas to latch onto, then I think this arc would have inflicted some very serious fatigue on me. And on top of that, the continued exploration of characters through mini flashbacks during these skirmishes are actually quite meaty, and they make me want to stop and take a moment to really digest what's going on a bit more. Now, unfortunately for Elf Gauche and Elf Marie, Merelf, I guess we would call her. But no matter how great their magic combination was, it is still magic, and in the words of the Witch Queen, before Asta, all magic is meaningless. Although they did still need to work together and create an opportunity for him. Oh, and also at one point Ghost created a disco ball, which was, that's kind of funky. Very nice use of mirror magic, you party animal. After all of that though, we are diving pretty balls deep into the Shadow Palace shenaniganry, where things just get a little bit wild and I guess completely unhinged. First up though, Fuego Leon and Mario Leona make an impressive entrance as expected, and may I just say I was a fool, an utter fool, to have assumed that Mario Leona was done for in this arc. I also found it pretty funny that she got matched up against Vedo, because as soon as I saw her opponent I was like, oh, you poor guy. You just got reincarnated only to die again. Which he didn't, but when you're up against Cisco Leon, it is more than likely. The two siblings also had this shared flashback which fleshed out how much they both respect and admire one another, which stems from an event known as the Tuesday of Blood and Flame, something I would kill to see. But I enjoyed Tabata highlighting their contrast, the differing types of strength and genius. Where Fuego Leon is logical and a calculated man, Mario Leona is an instinct-driven beast. And what's more, both of them recognize each other as the strongest, which is adorable and no doubt spurs each one of them to continue to be better in order to reach their ideal views of the other sibling. But one of many revelations that occurred in this third act of the Reincarnation arc surrounds my delightful Charmy, who is apparently a human-dwarf hybrid. And I was not expecting that or her sudden glow up, but there was something very beautiful about how her delightful, bountiful food sheep was transformed into a hungry wolf. Because of the whole wolf in sheep's clothing thing in just about every story surrounding wolves and sheep, they're very much natural opposites like Brits and Australians, or New Zealanders and Australians, or Australians and other Australians. Whatever the case, Charmy continues to be a strong favorite of mine, and if it wasn't for the whole Yuno obsession, I think she'd be pretty perfect. Speaking of Yuno, did I read something wrong, or is Yuno pregnant? There was an awful lot of talk about having Licht's child inside of Yuno during this arc, and I suppose congratulations are in order. I mean, I assume that this means that the elf's soul that reincarnated within Yuno was the child of Licht, which I suppose is very potentially how Yuno was able to quite easily resist being taken over by an elvish persona. It also, at least narratively, explains why Asta didn't use the reincarnation buster on Yuno back in the village. It still doesn't logically explain it though. Thinking back on it, there is still no reason, and it feels like a terrible idea not to vanquish the elf threat within Yuno when you had such an easy opportunity to do so. But in this arc, Yuno is also referred to quite blatantly as the Destined One, which is interesting, I suppose. Another very strong line and a hint of lines, or a line of hints, I should say, that Yuno is not of common heritage like Asta and the rest of their village. But as for moving on, it's pretty impossible to do so without mentioning the devil, or a devil, I guess. So Tabata did the thing he does, where it turns out that the character set up to be the main antagonist is actually a red herring for a third act twist. This twist turned out to be the most bizarre and sinister yet, as it turns out a literal devil is responsible for, I guess, all of the bad things, and I have some mixed feelings on that. On the one hand, I do like delving into this other world of existence. The devil of Asta's grimoire has always intrigued me, and it's fun to know that they're part of, what I think is a different race, maybe? In fact, Asta's devil even made an appearance to taunt his elder towards the end of the arc, which was pretty fun. And in terms of design, I will give Tabata all of the credit in the world, maybe not all of it, some of it. I will give him some of the credit in the world for making our enemy devil simultaneously sleek and cool, but also quite legitimately difficult to look at the same time. Every time the devil was shown, the art has this very disturbing quality about it, and it makes me actively not want to linger on it for too long, which definitely isn't a bad thing. I really like it actually, because it makes the devil feel like an abominable otherworldly existence, which is exactly what I think he is. The part I don't like about the devil is that his existence really does kind of dumb down the issues in this arc, and in fact all of Black Clover to this point, since this is a series climax. Most arcs have really been building up to this really intense hatred of humanity from the elves, and making me wonder, well, just what did humans do to deserve it? Because humans in this series do kind of suck. They're selfish, discriminatory, and there are more than a few that are just plain disgusting. So to me, it does seem like a bit of a cop-out answer that we discover, no, humanity was perfect all along, and it was just that pesky devil that ruined everything. Urgh. Which is tragic in its own way, because yes, it turned these races against each other, but it's kind of lame, and fails to properly grapple with the themes that Black Clover has been setting up rather well. Although if anything, it is a larger representation of the Reincarnation arc as a whole, with the whole elves taking over human bodies, so the humans aren't responsible and they don't have to reckon with their elvish actions. And in a grander way, now nobody is responsible for anything, and this was just a stereotypically evil entity that ruined peace on Earth. In fact, with this in mind, at the moment, humans are portrayed as almost a kind of symbol of purity, while the elves, well, they defiled themselves. And I really do wish that it had been the actions of humans alone that sparked the elf hatred, and that both of these races were very much in the wrong. And then, needing to come together to work out their issues. I like more grounded situations like that because they give you something to take away. Whereas if the reason why everyone did bad things was because of magic devils, and there's nothing I can really take away from that other than, oh, damn, that sucks, doesn't it? On the other hand, on a positive note, Mr. Devil-san did have some pretty cool magic to play with. The word soul magic is a very nice concept, and it made me realize why Tabata had gone to the effort to show that battle with Dorothy, the dream magic user. Because they have very similar styles of magic, just being able to conjure anything you want into existence, although the devil was on an entirely different level. But the dream magic was a gentle step towards the insanity of the devil, who, for being a being who could essentially speak anything into existence, seemed really fond of making super basic swords and spears and stuff. But there was also a nice explanation of how the 5-leaf grimoires are born, which was very cool. Great idea. Whenever the owner of a 4-leaf grimoire is engulfed by despair, it twists and corrupts into a new entity, one in which devils can seemingly infiltrate. There's some nice lore there. And also the potential of some future danger for our current 4-leaf grimoire holders. And we have now sort of solved the mystery of Asta's grimoire. It was previously Licht and transformed after the bad devil event. But like the real Lichts, not Patry and not William, who are also attributed to being Licht at some point. And can I be honest, I still don't know who Patry is, and I have to ask, am I supposed to? Honestly, the worst thing about this entire arc is anything to do with Licht. I kind of despise how convoluted everything becomes simply in relation to that name, whether it's body sharing, body swapping, impersonating, or whatever. Whenever Licht pops up, I have to fight real hard to stay mentally checked in because I just don't care. And that's a big problem because in this arc, the actual Licht does make an appearance as well, and I don't even know what to think about who this man is. The road to actually meeting him has been paved with very questionable stones and sometimes holes, just blatant holes, and I don't think it had the effect on me that Tabata intended. Because when any of Licht, Patry, or William appears, I just see this gigantic blur of elf weirdness. I have no strong opinion on any one of them. To me, they're all just, they're there, and they will continue to be just there, because William came back from his endless sleep, like I think I flagged in the last video that was possible, well, but even Patri remained alive, but in an artificial Licht body. Hooray. As did the three main dude bras, Rhea, Veto, and Second Fana. There are now two Fanas that are just alive in this world. That's wonderful. And it's just very interesting when none of your main antagonists die, because it makes me feel like we got out of this very long, very intense series climax with no real consequences for anyone whatsoever. And speaking of, I knew it. I didn't want it to happen, but the Wizard King is alive. So the very last page I've read reveals that he stored up some times and has now been revived as a 13-year-old boy. So look, there are consequences, sort of. I mean, he has to go through puberty again. That's a consequence. And I'm assuming that Julius won't be quite the magical powerhouse that he was as an adult, although who knows. And don't take this the wrong way, because I love his character, but he should be dead. Seeing stuff like this reminds me of a quote from Eiichiro Oda, the mangaka of One Piece, because in a 2019 interview he stated, "I hate the revival of the dead. If a mangaka ends up reviving the dead, then they shouldn't have killed that character in the first place." With that said, Oda is also a pretty gigantic hypocrite, because he frequently revives characters that he gave death scenes in the series, but I still very much agree with the sentiment, and it's disappointing to see another great death scene in media rendered retrospectively bankrupt. I should probably wait a little bit longer to reserve full judgment, because maybe this comes with more consequences for Julius than I'm aware of, but given everything else, probably not. And I keep thinking of what might have been a good potential workaround if he had to be reincarnated, and the only thing I can land on is if he got reincarnated as like an old man with 13 years left to live, rather than a 13-year-old child with a whole life ahead of him. So to summarize my thoughts on this matter, meh. Onwards to Nero now, and it turns out my favorite little burb is actually a 500-year-old devil lolly, and that's pretty cool, isn't it? Although I have to say I was pretty stunned when I saw Nero speak for the first time. It was a very wide-eyed what moment, and I didn't really even get to take it in, because then we were immediately taken to the first Wizard King. This I thought was a great way to solve the situation that Tabata had kind of gotten himself into. This crazy powerful devil that maybe can't be touched by anyone except the age-old talent of our first Wizard King. Or at least that's how I thought it would go down. It turns out Asta and Yuno played much more of a central role there. And Yami, let's not forget Yami ever, he was there. And he took a lot of the glory at the end, as per usual. But I did like the twist of involving the first Wizard King, whose name is Lumiere, another light-focused name like Licht. It was done in a great way though. I can see something like this feeling quite cringe, but Tabata I do think succeeded here. Although I do want a proper explanation as to why Nero became a bird, because as of right now, the quote we have is, "For some reason, I had been transformed into a bird." So we went all Rise of Skywalker there, you know, somehow Palpatine returned. As a whole experience, so I'm really glad that I did not read the Reincarnation arc all in one go. There's just so much to digest, and I'm pretty happy with the choice to experience it over 3 weeks or so. I think a lot would get lost in a single session, and it was really a compelling story. And yeah, I'm a bit annoyed by the lack of consequences or overall impact of it, and at the moment it really does feel like we went through all of this for nothing, and we've ended up with a net zero position. But to be fair, it was a very fun-filled journey to get to said position, with a lot of fantastic moments for everyone we've met up until this point, and there are a lot of characters who come out of this, like Noelle or Henry, as completely reinvigorated existences. And so we shall do nothing but look forward to the next arc. But that pretty much does it for this blind review of part 3 of the Reincarnation arc, and what do you guys think? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below, or even join my Discord server. And if you're keen for some more Black Clover content, then please do go and check out some of my other videos, or even subscribe to the channel for very maybe regular Black Clover goodness delivered straight into your YouTube feed. But for now, this has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time.